Liz Wilder, welcome to the journey. And
Thanks. This is kind of cool.
yeah, we've been doing the journey now for a little over 2 years,
Okay.
and a little over 100 episodes of having people on and just having conversations about their life experiences. And for some, it's been stories of where they may have had some setbacks in life, either because of something that has happened in their own life, or maybe a family member's or significant other's life. And what did they learn as they had that setback, and then how have they been given back to other people since then? It could be
Mm.
addiction, it could be mental health issues, it could be a change in job. A couple weeks ago we had Laura on, and she was born in Mexico City, and what was the experience of coming here from another country and not knowing English. I mean,
Oh,
so
wow.
so there's been a lot of different stories over time. And um, and uh, and unfortunately we've had a couple individuals who who came on the show, and we taped them, and then either months later, one, Ryan, died tragically in a car accident,
Oh, no.
and then another one, which we knew she had stage 4 cancer when she came on. And part of the intent of the story, of doing the episode, was so that her family would have another memento of her.
Mm-hmm.
And of course that was not the case. Ryan was young when he died, and our intent there was just to do a story of him being clean and sober after being addicted to drugs and alcohol.
Wow.
And but for his mom and his daughters, I'm glad we were able to do the story.
Wow. That's
So,
so cool. This is neat. Well, what a
well,
what a great deal.
well,
Awesome.
well, thank you, and thank you for being on. And I know we're going to get into a little bit of your story and who
Mhm.
you are, but we're also going to have a particular topic we're going to go after today.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Liz, just as we get started, one of the questions I always ask the guests that come on: what
Mhm.
does Liz do for fun when she has opportunity for fun?
Boy, oh boy. That's a good question because a lot of the stuff that I do for work is fun.
Mhm.
Radio is my background and I love it. So if the shoe was on the other foot, I'd be interviewing you and I'd be
Yep.
like, okay, this is more fun than it is work.
Yep.
But I do like to read. I used to be in the scrapbooking stuff, doing that all the time.
Mhm.
I have animals at the house, so I'm a big animal person. I love gardening, just a little bit of everything, but I really like being around my people, my friends, cooking. I like cooking,
Gotcha.
baking,
Gotcha. And when you
fun
say you
stuff.
have animals around the house, what do you mean, like cows and horses and
Oh
goats?
gosh, no, yeah. No, that's my family. And I have
Yeah. Okay.
my family, my mom's side family farm business is the cows
Okay.
and the sheep and the pigs and all that stuff. But no, okay. So I say had because Larry Bird passed about 4 years ago now. I had a blue front Amazon parrot that I had gotten in my travels and my years of
Okay.
radio. And we have cats and a German Shepherd dog.
Oh,
So
nice.
German Shepherds seem to be where we stick. When I
Okay.
met Brian, my husband Brian, I've been married 20 years this year.
Oh,
Never
congratulations.
thought I'd be doing that,
Yeah.
never. And my husband had been married once before, and he says he told all of his buddies he'd never get married again. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
You do. But he had a German Shepherd when I met him, and we decided we would breed her. And I had never birthed puppies before. I never saw a animal birth at all.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a new experience for me, and it was amazing. So we had 9 puppies, 8 living. So 8 little German Shepherd puppies running around for like 6 to 8 weeks. Oh, it was phenomenal. It was so much fun. But
Sure.
we've always had dogs with us now. We now have Katie Joe, who is a German Shepherd Husky mix. We got her from Noah's Ark. Let's see, this is December, so we got her 14 months ago.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, she's turned into being a wonderful dog. So she's with Brian right now at his office. We have a
Oh.
vest for her, and she knows when she puts the vest on, she's going to work.
Oh. Okay.
Kind of
It,
fun.
it is one of the things that my son just recently graduated with his master's in social work, and they rescued a golden poodle, and is that right?
Golden doodle, a
Golden
golden
doodle, yes,
doodle.
golden doodle. And so he would like to go through the process of having her be a therapy dog.
Oh,
And
it's wonderful. It's a very intensive process, but it's a wonderful process.
yeah, yeah, and I think it would be especially because he's going to be primarily working with youth and young adults.
Oh
I
yeah.
think it'll be a good fit. And she's a good dog. I mean, she's young. She's a puppy.
Yeah.
Eight
Well, it's energy,
9 months. Yes,
energy.
a lot of energy. Yep. Yep. Well, Liz, you said that you've been in radio your whole life. How did well, first I should ask, where when you grew up, high school wise, where'd you go to high school? Where'd you live growing up?
Isn't that funny? When I first moved to Rockford, and I this is my second time in Rockford.
Mhm,
When I first moved to Rockford, people would always ask me, "Where'd you go to high school?"
mhm,
And I thought, "Why are you asking me about high school?" I grew up in a town, Hannibal, Missouri, where we had one high school,
mm.
whereas in Rockford, there's how many?
Oh yeah.
7 or 8 of them? I don't know, it seems like a million, it seems. But we had one high school, so I'd just say Hannibal. People never knew. So
Okay.
Hannibal, Missouri is where I grew up.
Okay.
I am the oldest of 5, so I have 1 brother and 3 sisters. And I was actually born in Chicago, and we moved around because my dad was a hospital administrator. My mom was a nurse, and my mom is actually from this area. My dad is from Massachusetts.
Okay.
And they met when my dad was in the service in Texas. I believe the story goes it was my mom's nursing school roommate and dad's roommate who were actually dating, and mom and dad met through them. Of
Gotcha.
course, that's all
Yeah.
before me. So,
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah, yeah. And then as the stories carry on, it's like any kind of story. Sometimes there's added things and maybe deleted things,
hmm
right? So, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yep, yep,
But nonetheless, they become the stories. Okay. And s-
exactly.
and then so radio and communication.
So,
Yeah, how
okay,
did that all
so
come about?
Hannibal, okay, in Hannibal, like I said, one high school, but we had a radio station, KGRC, which was a 100,000 watt radio station. Now, at that point in time, I had no idea what that meant.
Mhm.
All I knew is that it was a big deal and it played all the music that we all like to grow up with and
Yeah,
sing and all that stuff. It reached about 4 or 5 states because 100,000 watts is huge. Oh, shoot, I should have shut that off, darn it. Sorry. I didn't think about shutting my phone off beforehand, sorry.
that's okay.
Um, so anyway, in high school, I took a class, a communications class, and one of the day was called a mass media day. So we all got to go to a television station because we had a local TV station, the radio station, and the newspaper. And you could choose what you wanted, or you could visit all 3 of them for little bits of time. And I thought, you know what? I am not interested in the newspaper. I really could care less about that. TV, okay, that's okay. So I went to go sign up, but there were no slots left. So then I went to radio and I thought, okay, fine, I'll just do the radio. That's cool. It's down the street from me a little bit anyway. So on that day, I was there for 1 hour and you are with the DJ and you're kind of, shadowing them inside the booth and everything. And I got to do the weather. It was really fun. And,
Mhm.
telling everybody about it. Of course, everybody's listening anyway because it's all the high school kids all day long on the radio.
Sure.
I liked it so much. I was taking all the other spots that were open and
Mm,
thought, okay, I like this. This is kind of fun. This is kind of fun. But then it went out of my brain. School goes on and I'm interested in other things. I was a pageant girl. So I was in the Miss Hannibal pageant and happened to win. Went on to the Miss Missouri pageant. Actually, I've gone there a couple of times. But I was interested in dance. Dance was my passion at that time too. And I played the piano. So those were my talents. And I really wanted to go into dance and performing arts, thinking, oh, I really like that. But then, like I said, mass media came up and I kind of got the bug there a little bit, but
sure.
forgot about it. College time, ready to go to school. And I was going to go to Columbia College in Missouri, majoring in dance and performing arts. I had a scholarship, everything ready to go. However, it was probably, I don't remember, it was like 3 months or something like that beforehand, not very long before school started, when we got this letter saying that some of the teachers were going to be let go or classes not offered anymore because of budget cuts. And I thought, oh, great, what am I going to do? And my dad says, sorry, you're not going there. We're going to find someplace else. And of course, I'm freaking out. I'm a senior with no place to go for, college. And
Right.
in our family, it's just a given. You just go to school,
Right.
you go to college. So I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Well, at that point in time, we, the pageant girls, were taping a show on the local radio station or local television station, and my mom came with me. Well, the person that was in front of us taping his show, I'll never forget his name, Terry Taylor, who was director of admissions at Northeast Missouri State University, which is now Truman University in Kirksville. My mom was talking to him while I was on being interviewed on the TV and basically got me enrolled. Now, I was like embarrassed as all get out. I can't believe you're talking to me about this, mom, blah, 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 whatever. But it was a lot of fun. But when I went there, I was also working in the admissions office. So I got to work with Terry and with some other people too that I still keep in contact today. But when I went there, I found out they did not have a dance program. So I'm like, what am I going to major in? What am I going to do? Music? Okay, fine. I'll just do music, whatever. So music was what I was thinking about. I also play the clarinet and I had picked up the saxophone and was starting to learn that too. So I was just going to major in piano, do piano. About my second year in, I'm taking the theory and it's all fun and games and I'm still in marching band and I'm, using all my musical talents, but I'm not liking it. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. I am in a sorority at that time, Alpha Sigma Alpha sorority, and we had an advisor whose name was Al Edavine, another name that is stuck in my head forever. He came into our chapter room and said, I need some bodies. Who's got an open period and whatever? And I'm like, sure, what do you want me to do? He goes, I just need for you to sit at a desk while we teach everybody how to use the cameras. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can do that. That's easy. He goes, you can bring your homework. You can do whatever you want to. Okay, cool. So there were two of us that were doing it. And I'm sitting at this big studio desk, it's a pretend studio desk reading, but I'm also watching him and I'm listening and going, this is kind of cool. I kind of like this. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That was that media stuff. So I got the bug again and decided to change my major and went for a mass communications major with an emphasis in broadcasting and public relations. So I did that and found out that radio was more my talent than TV. I don't want to put the makeup on all day, every day. I want to just be able to wake up and go and use my voice like God has given to me. It's a little raspy today because we've
Mhm.
had Christmas and, you get loud and crazy with your family. And
Yeah.
so it's a little raspy, but that's where it was. So that summer, trying to think of what summer it was, like 80. So what it must have been 83, must have been around 83 or so, because I was in Miss Missouri pageant at the same time, but I knew I was going to go into college, go my next year, also still at college. And I needed to find a job, make some more money, pay for the college. So I went to the radio station. I had answered an ad in the local newspaper and come to find out what they were looking for was a salesperson. Well, I didn't realize. I figured I could sell for 3 months before I go back to school. I didn't realize
Mhm.
I didn't know what I didn't know then,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, actually, the guy who was speaking with me said, I think you'd be better off working our automation system on the weekend. We could pay you on the weekend. I thought, oh, that would be good because then I could go to school, come back. It's only an hour and a half drive from school to home. So I was able to work during the school year at the radio station too. So I worked weekends. I was um, on every hour on the half hour doing the weather, and that was it. So I'd call my mom, Mom, I'm going to be on. I'm going to be on. Hurry up and listen. I'm going to be on. And it was no more than maybe 30 seconds max,
Mhm.
but I was on the radio. So after college, I graduated college and went to the station, and they had a full-time position available for me. So I just stayed there and worked there. It was an overnight position, but I also wrote copy, and KGRC was my big spot. From there, I moved. I was recruited, I guess, to go across the river to Quincy, Illinois. It's not very far away. That
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
another stomping ground. And we started a radio station there. Gosh, I think for the life of me, I can't remember what it is right now. But anyway, there were four other gentlemen and myself who were starting this radio station and loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was the one of the heydays. And those boys are all my brothers, my boys. They're
Mhm.
all my boys. And one of them unfortunately passed away a year ago. Chocolate Thunder, Reggie Coleman, deep godlike voice,
Yeah.
I just love it. But I see the other guys when I go back home too.
Sure.
Well, from Quincy, I my goal at that time was to be the top female radio DJ, or a top female DJ in one of the three markets, the big markets, which would be New York, LA, or Chicago. And I thought, okay, I got to work my way up. In order to work my way up, you have to move. That's just the way it is in the media business. You just like a newspaper or TV, you see somebody you like and then they're gone. Where'd they go? Because they had to go to a bigger market in order to move up in their career. That's what I did. So I left the Hannibal Quincy area and went down to Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis is where I consider my turning point in my life because it was where I had to actually depend on me and be me. I couldn't just be Liz Lukowski, hometown girl. So I had to actually have a different name. And I chose Liz Michaels because all the guys I were dating at the time were named Michaels. And I figured, what the heck, it's easy. And the first church I saw when I crossed the river was St. Michael's Cathedral. So I thought, okay, got it, God.
Yeah.
But anyway, so worked there at a rock and roll station overnight, loved it, but ended up getting a stalker.
Mm.
This was a hard time. I met a lot of wonderful people, had some very good experiences and some very bad experiences. One of the people that I met, his name was Joe Walsh, and yes, he is from the Eagles, Joe Walsh. He basically took me under his wing, if you will, when I had that stalker situation. I could not go home, could not go to my apartment where I had an unlisted phone number. I did not use my real name on the radio, so didn't have any of that. They didn't know who I was. But the stalker found out where I lived, what time I would go to work, what time I'd come home. He knew my apartment. He tried to get in by being a delivery person, and obviously it was a gated place, so they couldn't come in. But that was scary for me. I couldn't go back and feed my two cats because I had two cats at the time. I stayed with Joe and lived at his house for probably 6 to 8 months. But during that time, I learned how to shoot a handgun. I learned what was going on. I was a little more aware of my surroundings where I was not so aware before. I was a very naive girl in my hometown area, no big deal. But now I'm in this big city of Memphis and I have to grow up fast. Well, I did. Come to find out that that stalker turned out to be a transient who had a rap sheet like this long. And it was just a good thing that I had somebody else watching out for me. It
So,
was interesting.
how did how did you connect with
With Joe,
Walsh? Yeah, how that all
okay,
connected?
so it was like the first 2 or 3 days actually that I was there at this radio station. God works in mysterious ways. I'm telling you. When I first went down to Memphis, they had uh, lots of rain and stuff too. When I moved down there, they had flooding. But when I actually was taking all my stuff down the next week, they had snow. First time snow in a long time. Of course, it was nothing. It was a little itty bitty. We're used to feet, just a little bit, and they close everything down.
Mhm.
Well, while I was going down there, the U-Haul that I had broke, and I had to put my stuff in a storage unit, so I didn't wasn't able to go get that. So I only had little bits and pieces of furniture and boxes in my apartment. I say that because it's part of the story. The third or fourth day that I was there, our morning guy always has Joe and another guest come in his morning show and do the morning with him. Well, again, naive girl, didn't know who this person was, had no idea who Joe is. But when I went to let the people up on the elevator, because it was a security elevator, it was Joe Walsh and Jim Varney. You know what I mean, Vern? You know what I mean, Vern?
Yep,
Well, I
yep,
knew
yep.
who Jim Varney was. I didn't know who this guy Joe was, but I'm like all a gaga over Jim Varney. And then there were some other local musicians too. They were all in the studio, and I'm sitting here like this because my shift is over. I had the overnight shift. It's 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm all a gaga over Jim, not Joe. But no big deal. So then the next week, because they came every week, I was doing some recording and doing my commercial work after my shift. And the studio door opens up, which is no big deal because I had my headphones on and I'm editing. I could kind of hear somebody there, but normally people come in and grab a disc or, records or whatever was in the other room. I feel a tap on my shoulder. I turn around to look, nobody's there. I look this way, and it's Joe. He puts a rose down. He gives me a peck on the cheek and he says, "Lizzie, are you going to be here this morning?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll be there. I'm going to finish my work, but I'll go in. So I went in and watched them with this doing their show and was there pretty much every week. But a couple of weeks go by and he's like, "You want to go for a drink?" And I'm like, "Sure." So my 7 o'clock in the morning is 5 o'clock at night for most people. Okay, so I'm going across the street to the Peabody Hotel's bar where I'm drinking Bloody Marys or
Sure.
whatever at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning.
Hmm.
Again, my 5 or 6 o'clock at night.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
then it's like, I'm starting to get tired. I need to go home because I got to go to bed. And I said, I have to go. And he's like, "Well, I'll drive you. I'll follow you." I'm like, "Okay," because I still get confused with where I'm going. And he knew I'd been drinking, so he didn't want me to go off on my own. So he followed me home. He came to my apartment, and here's Joe Walsh. Now that I think about it, it's like, oh wow, crazy. But he's helping me put pictures on my wall, undo boxes, cleaning my apartment. And I'm like, oh well, gee, thanks, Joe. Okay, but I got to sleep now because I got to work again tonight, and I'm tired.
Yeah.
But that just started a friendship.
Sure.
And when I talk about my bird, Larry Bird, it was a blue front Amazon parrot. Joe had a parrot with another relationship that ended, and the girl got the parrot. Well, he was on tour, and he ended up going through St. Louis Union Station and found this little bird, Larry Bird,
Sure.
and took
Sure.
it home. Well, little Larry Bird kind of clung to Liz,
Uh,
and he ended up becoming my bird. So when Joe went back to California and I was finishing up the radio station stuff and going to be ready to move to Rockford, he said, "Lizzie, why don't you take Larry?"
mm.
Okay, I don't know anything about birds. What am I going to do? So I had 30 years with my bird.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it
And
was
that's
pretty cool.
and that's pretty typical, right? For those
Actually,
birds.
birds 40 to 60, but
Oh,
because the lifespan is getting shorter because of the foods that they're being given,
mm,
with you got the chemical dyes that are put into it. I didn't know that until much later. And my veterinarian was saying, "Yeah, we're kind of worried about all of this stuff happening now."
sure.
So it was very interesting. But normally I would have had him a little longer.
Gotcha.
But he's
Yeah.
been with me. He knew everything. He was a talker.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah, I remember growing up, and my mom's mom always had birds, but
Hmm.
these were I don't remember what the I don't remember. I don't know the different types of birds, but the one was a parrot, and the other one were like smaller birds. And that parrot was mean. It was the
Oh,
green, green,
all green.
all green, and it made a mess all the time, and it chattered, and we knew as kids, because I was the oldest grandchild around, and I
Uh
was
huh.
always at their. It seemed like I was always at their house, right?
Uh huh.
And but that you couldn't put your fingers near the cage, or he
Oh,
and so but over time as I got older, and maybe as he got older he became more mild, you know what I mean? And
right, right, right.
it wasn't as aggressive. But I just remember that all my uncle would drive my uncle crazy because he would just be squawking, never talking, just making noise. So,
Well, my bird Larry used to squawk a lot, but again, I had him from 6 months old, so I knew when he was a teenager, he got a little aggressive. I have a little scar here on my nose from him because he bit me,
mm,
and I'm like, Larry, whatever. But he was my bird.
sure,
But I taught him a lot of different things. He sung the alphabet A B C D E F G up to G, and then he'd start over again.
sure,
He'd say, "Hi Larry, hi, how you doing?" Because Joe would always say, "How you doing? How you doing?" So
sure.
he'd say, "Is how you doing?" Um, what's happening? To blow me a kiss. He'd kind of sometimes want to go to bed. Are you hungry? He'd get some things mixed up and say, "Want to go to bed? Blow me. Are you hungry?" Like, okay, that's enough. That's
Yeah.
enough. But he would get all squawky and crazy. And I had him when I met Brian, and he took to Brian like crazy. He would squawk and squawk and squawk when Brian was coming home until Brian said, "Hi, Larry," and then he'd be quiet.
Wow.
But he'd be up here on my shoulder, and he would be about this big. Like I said, I no longer have him, but he'd be about that big and give you little kisses. He'd give you kisses. He'd whistle.
Mm.
He was a very talkative bird, but they say that they have the intellect of about a 3 or 4 year old.
Oh, okay.
So
Interesting.
the vocabulary can be there too.
Sure, sure. Interesting. Very
Mhm,
interesting.
mhm. It's fun. It's fun.
So let me. And so then you ended up in Rockford,
So yeah, I'm
and
sorry. So
yeah,
yeah, long story longer. Good thing this is a long time.
yeah,
From Memphis, I was looking. Okay, so the radio station I was at was a rock station, and it was bought out by a top 40 station. I was one of two people that were kept on. Everybody else was given their pink slip. So I did um, overnights again and worked with Rumble and Thrower, who were the morning team. And I decided, you know what, I got to get out of nights. I don't like this. I'm ready to go elsewhere. So I was putting my resumes out, and there's a gal by the name of Kathy Hart. If you're from Rockford, I think you might
yeah,
remember her.
yeah, yeah. I remember.
Okay, Kathy Hart's uh, program director was asking her, "Is there another Kathy Hart anywhere that you know, whatever?" And she says, "Well, I don't really know. I'll figure that out." Somebody said, "Check this resume out. Check this one out." So I actually got the job from my resume, taking over Kathy Hart's spot. Kathy Hart, I follow her. It feels like I follow her.
Mhm.
I couldn't use the name Liz Michaels at the time because there was, I guess, a JJ Michaels in the media, the
Okay.
Rockford media. So I had to change my name. At that time, my mom and my dad had gotten a divorce. Okay, there's other extenuating circumstances in this journey. So I used my dad's new wife's maiden name, which was Wild, WYLD, but Liz Wild, it needed something. So I
Mhm.
put the ER onto it. So Liz Wilder, and that
Gotcha.
became my air name, Liz Wilder. So I was here for from May of 89 until October of 91. Um, yeah, October of 91. And then from here, I went up to Buffalo, New York. And that's when Kathy's program director said, "Hey, I need another Liz, or I need another Kathy who." So then I went up to WKSC in Buffalo, New York, and worked up there. Find out in the meantime, Kathy has now come to Chicago. Well, after my contract was up for a year, the gal who I was replacing, oh, and by the way, I had to go back to Liz Michaels because there was a Kim Wilde in the market. So depending upon what you call me, then I know where I know you from. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Um, anyway, so I came back to Rock. Okay, so I was in Buffalo for 1 year at KSE. I went right across the parking lot to WBUF and got the morning show with my friend John Summer up there, and stayed there for um, it was about 9 months, and then that station was bought and sold. So during that time, I thought, this is crazy. What am I going to do? Well, I worked 3 jobs just to pay my rent, and it was working in a shoe shop, a shoe store, um, working at a novelty store. I was doing voiceover work, and that was where I actually started my voiceover career too, was in Buffalo. But I decided I really need to know the ins and the outs of the voiceover business. I know what to do. I know how to edit, but I don't know how to sell myself. I don't know how to sell stuff. So I need to move. I need to get out of here. Buffalo didn't have anything other than the work with me. I had one college girlfriend, and that was it. But my hometown area was back in Rockford. My family is from the Byron, Oregon area, my mom's side of the family. So I knew I had cousins and I had family in Rockford. My name would still open doors. Liz Wilder, people still knew who that was, and I was familiar with the area. So why not come back? So when I came back, I called my friend Steve Summers up again. Steve is actually the one that hired me the first time. And I said, "Okay, I'm coming back into town. What do you got? Got anything available?" He's like, "No, but I got some sales." So I thought, okay, fine. I need to learn sales anyway. My plan was to be in the sales end of it for minimum 2 years before I start my own studio and keep going. Well, it didn't turn out that way. God had other plans. I lasted about a year and a half before I went on the air again at um, I, I want to say BUF, but I don't know what it is right now. Light 103 or B103, or I
Oh,
don't,
sure. Yeah.
they've changed.
Yeah.
Everything's changed.
Yeah.
So I worked with Jim Mackey at the time there. So I was basically on the air when I got back. Got back a year and a half. So I went back on the air about 96, 97,
Okay.
and was there until I got married with Brian. Um, and it was wonderful. I mean, I was doing morning show or I did midday or whatever, but it was my niche. And that's where I really enjoyed being on the radio. When I met Brian, he was going through a divorce, and I said, "I'm not going out on a date with you until your divorce is final. I just don't do that." So when it did become final, we ended up going on a date, and that's another story in itself. That's kind of fun. Another time, Kevin.
Okay. Okay.
But I was on the air, and the radio station was bought by, I think it's Maverick Media that owns it now. I don't know
Oh,
who owns it
okay.
now, but they were on, I guess they bought it in June. Let me think about this. No, May. And I was getting married September 22nd of that year, of 2000. Trying to think of how this goes. It's been so long ago. Basically, what happened was that the people that had them before had been trying to hire me to work for them at at their radio station for a
Okay.
number of years, and for various circumstances, I had to turn them down.
Sure.
So the joke was they had to buy the radio station that I was already at so that I could work for them.
Sure. Sure.
Well,
Yeah.
then it turned out that I was only going to work for them for 2 months because I told them, I said, "Well, here's the deal. I've got this day off already. It's my wedding, and I'm planning on taking 2 weeks." Well, Liz, that's right during the Arbitron ratings. Well, Arbitron ratings are a big thing. You don't take vacations, you don't do anything for 3 months because that shows you your ranking, and that also is the ability to raise or lower your prices for your sales team too.
Sure.
So it's a big thing, and it happens twice a year, spring and fall, for our market, Rockford market. TV and radio do them a little bit differently. But for radio at that time, back in 2000, it was starting like September 20th or 15th or something like that. They weren't going to give me my wedding day off. And I thought, that's not happening. I'm fighting for that day. He said, "Well, you can have, like the week off. But I was getting married on a Friday, and they wouldn't let me take that Friday off." I'm like, not happening. So my husband says, "Well, just quit." Ugh. What do you mean, just quit? I've never just quit a job without having a backup. Are you kidding? What am I going to do? Well, that was when my studio here was being built, and I was getting it more and more on the road and ready to go. And I thought, okay, fine, I'm going to do it. And he's like, "Honey, we can handle this. You can do it." So I quit in August of 2000. So I only worked for them for 2 months, and then got married in September, did the honeymoon stuff, and really got played in my studio here, and decided I really want to get back on the radio. I miss the radio. I miss talking to people, telling and sharing with things that are going on in the world. You know, this has been a crazy year, 2020.
Yeah.
Would have loved to have been on the radio to share, but I'm sharing in a different way now.
Mhm.
Anyway, I ended up going to Chicago, worked at the light for Chicago. Kathy Hart was in Chicago. So who am I following?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was full-time middays for about 3 months while one of the gals was on maternity leave. And then I didn't want to keep driving back and forth, and said to Brian, "I'm not going to do this full time. I'm going to come back and really work on my studio." And then told the radio station, "I'm just going to do weekends." So I probably did that for about 2 years, and then thought, that's enough.
Yeah.
That's enough. So came back here and pretty much did my own gig for a long time. I was contacted by some other radio stations to do voice tracking. So while I was here in Rockford, I had my voice in other areas
Okay.
and other cities.
Sure.
And then just, doing my own thing now.
So then, as you started really taking the Liz brand, right? Because the last
Hmm.
name might
Hmm.
have to change, right?
Right, right.
So really, as it shifted from being specifically attached to a particular radio station, it then kind of started evolving
Yes.
into the Liz Wilder brand for Liz Wilder,
Hmm.
and then you may obviously do work for other stations, but it
Right.
wouldn't be exclusively for them as an employee.
Correct.
Is that what I'm understanding?
I'm an independent contractor.
Okay.
So Liz Wilder and my company is WOW Broadcasting, which stands for Words of Wilder.
Okay.
So
Nice.
wow.
Yeah.
And I don't have I usually have a flag thing on here, but yeah, so I can go anywhere. You may hear my voice in grocery stores, or on a phone, or on a website somewhere. I mean, sometimes when I do the spots and I do things, I have no idea where they end up.
Mhm.
I actually was in Meyer a couple of years ago and getting cat food,
Mhm.
and I happened to hear myself on the speaker, and I went, "Oh, that's me," to nobody in particular, but I'm like, "Oh," it still surprised me to hear
Sure.
myself.
Yeah.
I've had friends in Massachusetts be at CVS Pharmacy, and they're like, "Liz, did you ever do a spot for such and such?" And I'm like, "I have no idea. I
Yeah.
probably did. I
Yeah.
don't remember."
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
I did.
Nice. Okay. Well, good. And that's been essentially 20 years.
Mm.
Often,
Well, let's take it back further then, because radio, 83, since 83,
yeah. No,
basically.
no, with the studio,
Oh, the studio,
specifically
yeah.
the studio.
Full time with my studio since 2000. Yeah,
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah,
All right. Okay. Well, great.
yeah.
Well, and it is amazing. I know that for me, without a doubt, I would not be able to have done what I did with KP counseling or Shadow or Silence or any of the stuff if my wife Diane wasn't the way she is. Like,
Isn't that crazy?
I mean, just not only from a standpoint of not only the support, but then being okay with me, 14-hour days or whatever it may be. And obviously it was more when I first started those
Mhm.
companies, but she's always been supportive, got it, and was able to also take care of some of the other things so that I didn't have to, you know what I mean? So that, and not, and even though of course I could find my way, I could find a way to find guilty about stuff, but it wasn't because of anything that she said or did or anything like that.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it is,
Exactly.
Napoleon Hill wrote a book, Think and Grow Rich,
Yes.
and he wrote it at the beginning of the early 1900s, right? And he talked about that behind, and at that time all those individuals that he was interviewing were all men, and
Oh.
he talked about the integral part of those men being able to be successful had to do with who was behind the scenes,
Mm.
their life partner behind the scenes, and that was, talking about FDR and talking about Rockefeller and Bell and different individuals like that, all had Carnegie, all had partners who were who really were. Um, not just vice president in name, but they actually were partners, and they were in some ways the strength behind the face.
Yep. I
And
I totally believe that.
yeah,
I
so
totally believe that.
and I think then, because like Diane, probably very similar to in Brian's case, Diane knew that I was ready to start KP a year and a half before I was ready to take that leap.
Mhm.
And then it was just for her, it was just a matter of, okay, go. You
Mhm.
just need to do this.
Mhm.
There's a whole other story behind it, but we'll get into that another
Yeah,
time. But
see? I know, exactly.
so
Exactly. And I gotta tell you, my husband, Brian, and this is gonna take me back to my early years again, I would never have taken a second look at Brian if I hadn't had a previous experience with my family and my little brother.
mm,
So I'm gonna back you up to the '80s.
okay.
When I'm growing up, my parents had been married for 23 years. They got divorced. I took it very hard. 3 big things happened in that time frame. So, my parents' divorce, my little sister, Jennifer, she's my middle child, my middle sister, was in college as a freshman, and she got pregnant. So that January, she tells me that she's pregnant, or January, February, something like that, pregnant, and I'm doing my overnights at the radio station. So I remember driving to Kirksville, which is where she was going to school, and bringing her fruit for some reason. Yeah, fruit. Why would I bring her fruit? Whatever. And having to be with her as she told my mom, called my dad and called my mom. So I'm calling my dad saying, "Hi, Daddy, it's Liz. Oh, what are you up to?" I said, "Well, I'm here with Jennifer, and she's something to tell you." "Oh, what? She married? Is she pregnant?" And I'm like, hang on a minute, Dad." So there it is. So then, she's telling, and I'm being toilet paper brigade, bringing her Kleenex because she's crying. Then we call my mom, and I'm like, "Mom." And at that point in time, my mom and I were not on very good terms because of the divorce. I kind of blamed her for some other incidents and things that happened, which now in my adult mind, I understand, but in my child mind, I didn't understand at
Yep.
all.
Yep.
Um, so I was like, Mom, it's Liz. I'm here with Jennifer. She has something to tell you here. And so Jennifer says, Mom, I'm pregnant. My mother hangs up on her. And of course, Jennifer's calling. She's bawling then. Mom calls back and I answer and she goes, Put Jennifer on the phone. I thought, oh shit, now we're in trouble. Oh, I shouldn't have said that.
It's
But
okay.
it's like, oh gosh. So Jennifer's on the phone with mom and she talks it all through. Well, it all turns out fine. But my mom at that point in time kept thinking, great, I'm divorced. Now I have a daughter that's pregnant. I have this big A on my forehead, divorced adult. And she was just feeling horrible too. So it all kind of came around in full circle. So that was in February. That year, I was in the Miss Missouri pageant again, and we were going to do orientation is June 1st, and then the pageant is July in Mexico, Missouri. June 1st, the night before, I get a phone call in the middle of the night. Elizabeth, your brother's been in an accident. You need to come to the house. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And then my first thought is, do I bring my pageant stuff? And the gal that was calling me was my mom's best friend's daughter, Cindy. And she says, Liz, just come to the house. So when I got to my family home, because I was living in an apartment, she kind of filled me in on what was going on. My little brother had been in a horrible accident. He and his friend were going to a party. They hadn't reached it, but there's a very curvy road called River Road, and his car hit a culvert, was airborne, stopped, hit a parked car, and that parked car stopped his car. If it hadn't been there, he would have hit a huge gas tank, those big white gas tanks,
Oh
and
yeah. Yeah.
exploded. Well, as it turned out, my brother, there was somebody following them, had just had a gal and her boyfriend had just finished coming off of work and she worked at the hospital. She saw this car parked and didn't think anything of it, went and changed and coming back. And as they were coming back, my brother's passenger was out in the road, kind of stumbling. He only had a lacerated spleen, nothing else happened. My brother was stuck in the car with a head injury. It was oh, I forgot what they call it, neither here nor there. He had no cuts, no bruises, no scratches, but he had some internal bleeding. He had a collapsed lung also. Oh, brainstem trauma. It was a brainstem trauma because the
Oh.
brainstem was got jerked
Oh.
around. So with a collapsed lung, it took him 1 hour for the people to stop and see him. So there's 1 hour. It took the emergency people another hour to cut him out of the car. They took him to St. Elizabeth Hospital and it had like 3 doctors and 4 nurses or something like that working on him. Then they airlifted him over to Quincy, Illinois to the trauma center. My brother was in a coma for 2 months, June, July, so August, 3 months basically. And then when he came out, he was paralyzed on his left side, partially paralyzed on his right, and could not speak.
Mm.
We didn't know until much later that he couldn't see either, that he was seeing double vision because of the brainstem trauma. So my brother was in Columbia, Missouri, going to rehab for quite a while, trying to, he was just going, we were just trying to find out everything we could do. And I was trying to do everything I possibly could. At that point in time, it's like I don't remember a whole bunch, but I remember driving. My day was this: I would go to work at the radio station at 5 o'clock, do my commercial work. 7 o'clock, I'm on the air. I'm off the air at midnight. I would drive 3 hours to Columbia, Missouri, sleep at my girlfriend's house, get up at 8 o'clock, be there with my brother at 9 to be for his workout stuff, leave at noon, and be back at the radio station. I would do that 4 times a day, or 4 times a week, and not really think about it because it was my brother.
Hmm. Yeah.
But as it turned out, it wasn't helping him. So he came back to Hannibal, Missouri, and stayed at Beth Haven Nursing Home, which was 2 blocks away from where we lived. My brother, my sisters, and myself would all go and sing to the patients there. We'd
Sure.
walk up the 3 blocks over there. So we were very familiar with Pleasant View. They all knew him, and people knew my brother too. So bottom line is, my brother was in a paraplegic basically from 20 years old, and he just passed away February 5th, 2018. It's hard, but he was in a wheelchair. So I was more comfortable with wheelchairs. And I say that because I dated many, many men before I found the one. So kissed lots of frogs before I found my prince. And my prince has 2 boys. He has 3 boys from his previous marriage. 2 of them are in wheelchairs. If I hadn't had that experience with my brother, I'm I can now say it without feeling guilty, Kevin. I was shallow enough not to give him a second look. So because I had that experience, that wheelchair did not bother me.
Yeah.
Those 2 boys did not bother me, whereas before it probably would have.
Yeah.
So they're a blessing. That's a lesson I learned from my brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
For that, oh man.
I um, I can relate different type of story, but relate to the
I'm
the
gonna stop you real quick because I
yeah.
remember the third big thing was
Oh
with
yeah,
the birth
yes.
of my nephew. My
Oh,
nephew.
oh yeah, that
And I
year,
and I
yes.
knew that God would not take one male away without giving us another one. We
Sure.
just knew it was a boy.
Yeah.
She never
Yeah.
did an ultrasound. We just knew it was a boy. So
Nice.
anyway, John Paul,
Yeah.
that was my dad.
And so that helped in the midst of not knowing the state of your brother
Hmm.
and if he was going to come out of the coma or what was
Well,
going to happen,
exactly.
then you had the hope, belief of this
New
of
birth.
the continual cycle of life.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So those were the big things that changed and impacted me, my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. What's your brother's name?
My brother's name is Vincent
Vincent.
Paul.
Vincent Paul.
Mhm.
Okay. And just real quick, my grandmother on my mom's side, she was a diabetic, and due to complications of diabetes, she had her leg amputated. So I
Oh.
grew up as a grade school person, not helping, being in the hospital, going to the hospitals all the time, and helping with the bandages, helping with her with that. My father, who was a former, all state football player up in Wisconsin, and then later went on was one of the top recruited football players in the country, went and played for Iowa State, has been wheelchair bound for the last 7 years.
Ah.
Very much, it's when he needs assistance, it's this thing that I just do
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
it's very familiar when I was growing up, helping and trying to help out when I was a grade school kid. So that empathy that you were referring to, or exposure and then later empathy,
Mhm.
definitely, it's interesting how it plays itself out. It
Yeah,
definitely
very
is.
much so.
Yeah.
Very much so.
So I know one of the things that we had talked about. You had me on one of the shows
Mhm.
that you do a few weeks ago, and it was talking about the difficulty of just that naturally unfolds during the holidays, right? And then of course everything's compounded this year and
Yeah.
complicated even more
Ugh.
because of the restrictions with COVID and just some of the concerns and fears and all those things, let alone there's obviously other things that have happened in 2020, with the
Mhm.
election and, a handful of other things. But, and, and definitely my wife and I were talking about this just over the weekend, that how many more Christmas lights are up this year compared to, at least us being aware of it in the years past.
Yeah.
And I think that probably is maybe reflective of people having literally more time on their hands and
Good
investing in
weather too, and
it.
good
Yes,
weather.
yep, and definitely utilizing that good weather to decorate,
Yeah.
the outside as well as inside of homes. But that doesn't mean that this isn't a tough time.
Yeah.
Tough time for people because of the uncertainty financially, of health issues,
Mhm.
of actually, loss of life as a result of COVID.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
I know that we had talked about that, and you had asked some. That was a big thing that this station that you're doing some contract work really wanted to get that message out about,
Mhm.
about one acknowledging it, because I
Mhm.
think sometimes we need to just share about where we're at, so that one, we can own it, right, in that
Right,
piece of it.
right,
But it also then someone may be listening and giving them permission as well, right?
right.
And I know that you have had your own this time of year you have your own difficulties with this time of year, because it brings up the losses that you've had in your own life.
Yeah.
So how have you noticed over the last couple years? Because you would share that your mom died right around this time 3 years ago.
December 30th, 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my little brother, oh gosh, Kevin, my little brother, February 5th, 2018. And then my father in law, August 2nd of 2018. So three, bing, bang, boom. And I just happened to find a picture. I don't know if I can show this to you. Can you see that?
Oh yes.
That was shortly after my brother's accident.
Oh okay.
And then you see my nephew, John Paul, here.
Oh okay.
So this is probably a year afterwards, but this is what my brother looked like before the accident. Yeah.
He looks like, was he an athlete?
Yes, and he was a wrestler.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Okay. He
I'm
looks like
partial to wrestlers, can you tell?
yeah, yeah, yeah. He looks like he looks like he was an athlete. Looks like he was a wrestler. So
Yeah, yeah, and
yeah.
he was a golfer and stuff too.
Okay.
So, okay, so you asked me how I will tell you that after all of that happened, I felt like I was in a fog for about a year and a half, and it wasn't until probably maybe even a year from now that I finally feel like I'm coming out of the fog and then I can start living again.
Mhm.
Because every little thing would make me think of my mom or my brother, my father-in-law. It was just very, very difficult. But my sister this year, gonna make me cry again. One of the traditions that we would always do with my mom would be making caramels. And so Thanksgiving, we make caramels. And then the Christmas time, we do Christmas cookies. So we do the rollout and the cutouts and whatnot too. Well, my baby sister, Joanne, has taken over the caramel making, which is fine because it's a process.
Sure.
But the rest of us are all looking for this a sugar cookie that tastes like mom's, and you can never find anything that tastes like mom's, you know? Well, this year, my little sister, God love her. I don't know where she found it, but she found my mom's recipe written in my mom's handwriting and made all of us girls and my nieces um, a recipe on a uh, uh, cutting board, different
Beautiful.
sizes. Isn't that cool? In my
Beautiful.
mom's handwriting.
Yeah.
So we've got the recipe now. We'll always have the recipe, and it's on a cutting board. It's always going to be there. So it's just a part of her that's still with us too. So when you ask me how I get along and how I deal with it, it's day to day. Little things will set me off like this is setting me off right now
Yeah. Yeah.
talking about them. It's like waves. I think I shared this with you once before, but you get knocked over and over and over with the first wave of grief. You know, that first year is hard with the firsts and going through the firsts without them. I actually think, Kevin, the second year is the worst.
Yeah. That's what a lot of people.
It's the
Yeah.
worst because people forget. People forget. You don't forget because it's still there. But then how do you go on? How do you go on? So this year we've decided my sister Joanne or Jennifer is hosting. She's taking up mom's hosting duties. We've all gotten a little something. We're doing a sisters weekend. Um, we used to always get together on my brother's birthday, which is December 28th, and celebrate my Christmas with my dad. Now, my dad had a stroke in 2006, and he is in an assisted living facility across the street from where my brother was. So we would always go see my brother and my dad at the long, long time.
Sure.
And my husband and my dog are back. Um, so now, come here, Katie. Sorry, this is oops. This is Katie. Stop. This is Katie Joe. I don't know if you can see her. She's right here. Can you say hi, Katie? No,
Oh,
there.
beautiful.
My little German Shepherd girl. But anyway, so we haven't been able to celebrate with my dad, and COVID is hard. We we each put everything in a box, my presents for my dad in a box, and my sister Jennifer is going to go and drop it off at the assisted living. Unfortunately, we're not going to be there to be able to open it up for him. So that's another heartache for me. However, I know that Zoom, also Facebook messaging and Insta or what I forget the other one. I don't have an iPhone, so whatever you do with the iPhone,
Yeah.
FaceTime,
FaceTime.
you
Yeah.
can still talk to each other there, but it's not the same. It's not a touchy, and I'm a
Yeah.
huggy person. I want the touch. I want to be able
Yeah.
to touch him and to see how he's doing and make him get up and walk and show me how he's walking. You know, I want to be able to do that. So it's difficult.
Yeah.
But I'm I'm trying to keep their memory alive by doing the little things, doing the sugar cookies, getting together, doing our sisters weekend. what would my brother we did pictures, and there's a they always say when you have a little orb or something in the picture that's a spirit in there. Well, my brother, I think, was acting out, and he used to tease my baby sister tremendously. There's a little something going on in one of those pictures, and we were all
Mm,
laughing about it. Vincent's around, so
sure.
we know that they're around. It is our belief that we are all spirits having a human experience, and this is just a body that we are inhabiting for this short amount of time to have whatever experience it is that we are supposed to have. So I know that my faith has already said that I know that I will see my mom and my brother again and my father in law. So it's just that keeps me going. I don't know how people without faith do it. I really don't, Kevin. I really don't know how people do it.
Well, I think it is. So here, maybe someone out there may challenge this. I don't know, but
And they might.
I I I think everyone has faith. It's just, what do you have faith in?
Okay,
You,
that's a better way of saying it.
meaning, a person may, because of a lack of experience or because of certain experiences, may say, I don't believe in anything.
Mm,
You know, which is, I don't understand that. You know what I mean?
right,
Because
right.
one, when you listen to them talk, they tend to believe in something, and
Correct.
they feel pretty strongly about that something, even though it may not be attached to a particular religious system or spiritual basis system that's been established. But I think, for me, it's an evolving process, right?
Right.
It's you have things that happen in our life that will shake us out of our paradigm,
Yes,
and
yes.
and at least in my history, I've always made God smaller than he ever was. Right?
Mhm.
I had to make my concept of God fit
You.
into what I could understand, right?
Right.
And then things would happen, and then it would expand, and I wouldn't not necessarily go easily with with that evolution of it, but
Right.
it says in Genesis that we were created in God's own image. Kevin's history has been, I created God in my own image, and so I've gone through the time period when he was the Santa Claus God, or
Yes.
the
Yes.
vending machine God, where I put something in, this is what I expected to get, come
Yep.
out of it, or whatever it may have been. But
Yep.
when we have things happen, regardless if it's professionally related or personally related, or loss, right?
Mhm.
Or
Mhm.
all the things that collectively we've experienced this year, um,
Mhm.
it's going to challenge that paradigm.
Yeah,
And
yes, I can tell you, Kevin, my paradigm has stretched, has changed. It's sometimes it's oblong,
yep,
sometimes it's like an octagon instead
yep,
of a yeah,
yep.
it's crazy.
Well, and you had said something to me, I can't remember if it was today or before, is that even like when losses happen, right? A loss of life, right? So
Mhm.
we can have, we can, we have this thing, for most of us as humans, even though that we're still sad about the person not being here. But if a person dies in their 80s, or a person dies in their 90s, we have this space that we rationalize that, oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, so they lived a good life, or even if they didn't live a good life, it was that they lived life.
They lived a long life
Right. And
and we
then,
were ready for it.
yeah, and then when someone dies earlier in life, or there's a traumatic death, that that again, it messes with that paradigm. It messes with the story that I have to try to tell myself.
Yep. Yep, exactly. And I can tell you that that paradigm shifted again when that year of 2017, that fall of 2017, my brother. Okay, so I have to tell you, my mom died of a glioblastoma. It was the same thing that Senator McCain had. So
Yep,
it's a tumor in the brain.
yep,
We found out in July, and I don't know how much time we have. I'll try to make this short.
yep, yep.
We found out in July about mom's glioblastoma. She had surgery in August and then was on a chemotherapy, radiation, and clinical trial drug. So in September, she was going through that and it was knocking her for a loop. Well, in September, my little brother was also in the hospital. He had pneumonia.
Mhm.
And that's hard when you're, a paraplegic and your lungs just don't work. So my sister Jennifer and myself were with my brother. My other two sisters, Marion and Joanne, were with my mom. And I remember being with my brother alone and, him holding my hand and I'm saying, Vincent, we can do this. Let's fight through this. You cannot die. Do not die because it would kill mom. You cannot do it. We've got to get through this. And I know it was just probably his will to live for my mother that got him through all this, because seriously, he was in a weakened condition. My mom did see him in October, and that was the last time she saw him. The last time they actually saw each other, and they could speak on the phone, but that's the last time they saw each other. And then when mom passed December 30th, um, it was hard for us to tell Vincent. My sisters went and told him. Actually, I think we all kind of did. And we told my dad as well, who was very upset. And then mom's funeral was January 4th, and we buried her on the 5th. My little brother passed away on February 5th, a month to the day, almost the time that we buried my mom. My little sister was on the way there. She was in the parking lot when he passed. Um, we did not know any of this. When I was called, I was contacted on the phone, and I just felt like somebody sucker punched me. I lost my breath. I couldn't catch my breath. I was irrational. I'm like, Brian, I gotta go. I gotta go to Hannibal. I gotta go now. Whatever. And it was that horrible, horrible snowstorm that we had up here in Rockford. It was just like 10 to 12 inches of snow that we had. It was just horrible. And I was just irrational. There was nothing I could do because it was out of the ordinary for me. And my paradigm shifted big time. I
Sure. Oh yeah.
mean, you know.
Do,
So
do,
I don't I know my empathy for people right now. I have a girlfriend I have a sorority sister and her brother whose mom passed December 21st. I have Kathy's picture on my wall here, the mom who I was close to also. I feel for them.
yeah.
I am sending them a note because I know what they're going through on this 1 year anniversary. It's
Yeah.
so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's made me more empathetic.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and that's why I so appreciate you being so open and transparent with sharing your story. And I know that it's for us that are communicators, for us that are talkers, right?
Yeah.
We need to talk, right? And
Mhm.
because that's a way of our own healing. And it's also being able to give other people permission as they're on their own journey, either
Yes.
permission to try something like a different, like an idea, or just to hear what you've been doing with your family, with yourself, with you and Brian. What things have you guys done for your own healing?
Mhm.
Your sister's gesture, right? And
Yeah.
those talking about it, sharing moments, sharing rituals together, traditions, creating new ones. These are all
Mhm.
things that it doesn't make the pain go away. It makes a way to live with the pain.
With it. Yeah.
Right.
You had mentioned in our conversation how I told you that my husband, after his dad passed, he went on a long motorcycle ride by himself. And you said that was his way of coming to terms and grieving. And I thought, you know what? A light went on. That's not how I would have done it. But I never put it, I never put it two to two together. And that's what he was doing. He
Right.
needed that time alone to think and to grieve. And I just didn't realize that because that's not how I grieve.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's said all the time, but it's true. We all grieve differently,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and of course we would, because we all live our own path, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
if we mimic too much of what another person does, then we're not being true to our own call and our own path. But being able, because we have a choice, right? We have a choice in the pain to learn and grow from it, and love and have empathy with it, or we grow hard and can become bitter.
Mhm.
And
Sorry.
so to be able to have so to be able to have that choice, not that it's not easy,
Right.
and there's nothing easy about it. And actually, it's kind of like I did a talk recently about self-care and about taking care of yourself. There's nothing easy about taking care of yourself. There's nothing. I mean, I didn't want to go and work out this morning, but I know that if I don't work out and don't do certain things, then I'm not at my best to help other people.
Right.
And
Okay.
so, but easy? No, no, it's not easy. I would rather stay in bed. I'd rather just, hit the snooze again,
Yep, I gotcha.
or
I
whatever
gotcha
it may
totally
be.
there.
So Liz, thank you so much for being here. As always, I love our conversations, and we can go on and spin off and talk about many different things.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
someday, one of my backstories is, like many bodybuilders, I was thrust into the entertainment industry, but via security, and working
Ah.
security. But with that, I had friends then later who were in the music industry, and playing and other aspects of the music industry. But then I've had a couple friends of mine that have gone on and either been radio personalities or different aspects of that. So it is, once it's in your blood, it's hard
It's
to.
yep.
Yep, it's hard. It's hard not to find. It's kind of like I joke, when I got done bodybuilding, I had to find another way to find a stage.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yep.
But this time I get to be fully clothed, so that's good.
Instead of in your little,
Yeah,
yeah, Speedo outfit, yeah.
exactly, exactly. So, Liz, as we wrap up, if there was one thing that you would want the listeners to hear, what would be that one thing?
To hear. I just want you to hear happiness in my voice. I want you to hear the emotion in my voice. Sometimes the words don't matter, but it's what you hear inside it. And I have learned that it is a day by day. Be grateful. Wake up and be grateful that you are aware, that you are awake, that you are taking that first breath. And then just open yourself up to be available. I mean, it sounds strange, but to be available for whatever experience comes along, be it good or bad, because there's a lesson in there somewhere.
Yeah,
And who knows? Who knows? It might not be for you. It might be for your husband, for your wife, for your best friend. It might be for somebody else that you're going through this that they can learn. That's all I can say. And have a Merry Christmas,
yeah, yeah.
even though it might not be merry in the way that you had a Merry Christmas before. It'll be totally different. But
Well,
embrace that difference too.
yeah. And as we're moving into a new year,
Oh, and
there's
I'm excited about this new
yeah,
year.
yeah. And I don't think anything magically is going to happen on January 2nd.
No.
Meaning everything's going to be completely different, probably similar to the Y2K thing. Well,
Yeah, right,
nothing,
right?
in that case, nothing did happen. In this case, probably, it's going to be what we do in 21 to make the life that we can make with the choices we have,
Yep.
things that we learned, hopefully learned about ourselves and our communities in 20. Right?
Yeah. And I think the only thing I want people to remember is that like I had mentioned before, we are all spirits. We're all spirits having a human experience.
Mhm.
We're all here.
Yeah.
So that's it.
I'm doing everything I can not to go out on a bunny trail on that one. So we're going to go
I
ahead and
know.
that. So sometime in the future, I'll have to have you come back on and we can talk about some of the things that are right around that, because I'd love to have
That'll
continue
work.
that conversation. So
Thanks,
thank you
Kevin.
very
Well,
much. And say hi to Brian for me,
I
and
will.
a great Christmas and a great New Year. And I hope 21 is everything you make it to be.
It's going to be a fabulous year.
Great.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. Bye bye.